Court side of the virtual hardwood, it's the NLSC podcast, episode number 403. Andrew with you once again. I am Andrew in the forum and Andrew NLSC on Twitter. My co-host is Derek. You know him as D3 and D3D4 on Twitter.
No, I'm happy to be here again. We have to kick off this show talking about the game we had on NBA Jam Tournament Edition on the same team using the 2K14 mod created by Miller Time 2325. Was that the most unbelievable NBA Jam game you've ever played?
I think so. You know, we've had a couple of games this year. That game of NBA Live 10, where you hit that shot, the game winner from beyond half court, is one of the craziest games we've played together or in our lives of playing basketball gaming. As far as Jam goes, that was insane.
This game, people, so basically Andrew hosted on Parsec, and I connected with him, and he booted up NBA Jam Tournament Edition for the Super NES. We both own the physical copies of this game, and so, you know, we were able to play it on Parsec. And he installed the 2K14 mod, so its roster is updated to what they were on 2K14. So we actually have Steph Curry and Klay Thompson on the Warriors. So we chose the Warriors. We thought that would be a fun team to use. I locked on Klay Thompson. He locked on Steph Curry. We ended up playing against the Spurs, who started off the game with Duncan and Tony Parker. This game was absolutely wild and full of ups and downs. It went triple overtime. And the craziness actually started, if you remember correctly, at the end of the first half, when you had about 1 second left with Steph Curry and you took a full court three and it went nothing but net. So we get to the end of regulation. They hit a shot to send us into the first overtime. Then in the first overtime, I chuck up a full court three with Klay Thompson. We're down by 3. I think it was 79-76.
Yes.
Something along those lines. And I chuck up a full court three, and I hit it with Klay Thompson to send us into the second overtime. Then they hit a full court three when we're up 3 at the buzzer to send it into the third overtime. And then we ended up winning actually by double digits. And the only reason we won by double digits is I hit a last second shot in the third overtime from full court. Nothing but net. I've never seen that many buzzer beaters. Never mind full court shots. I've never seen that many buzzer beaters happen in a game, arcade or sim, in one game. I've never seen it.
It was truly wild. We did pull away with a great effort in the third overtime. I think we won about 115 to 104, something like that.
That's correct. Yeah, it was the final score. Yep.
When we just pulled it out like that, but and we thought, we've got it. We've pulled ahead in the second overtime. Then they got a steal and they brought it within 3. And then with okay, well, this is it. They're going to have to make this full court shot, and they did. And it's not like the clutch ratings are maxed out for all of those players, but the Super Nintendo version of Jam Tournament Edition, I've noticed it is very common to hit those full court shots, especially compared to the PC version at least. So yeah, it was just exchanging these full court shots, and we wanted to win that game. Because we'd played another game earlier, we were still getting used to it again. You were getting used to having some of that input lag over Parsec because my connection's not as fast as yours. And we thought, we don't want to lose this game. We don't want to lose this game. So to win it like that.
I messaged you and I was like, listen, we can't end on that. Yeah. I was like, one more. We can play one more.
Yeah. And we pretty much ended up playing that equivalent with that with the three overtimes. No, it was wild, and that's what we love about basketball gaming. When something is like that, it's just like a real game, you know, free basketball as they call it, as you always see on the NBA Twitter putting it out there. But that was crazy having that many full court shots to send it into overtime, and then double overtime, and then triple overtime.
Yeah, wild. It's like, and the thing is about that game too is, okay, the connection wasn't flawless. Like, I had to put up with a little bit of input lag, but it worked good enough for us to play our roles. Like, we looked at the stats at the end of the game, and I had to play the big man role with Klay Thompson, and I had 7 blocks and 11 rebounds, I want to say, and you had 22 steals with Curry, so you were doing your job on the other end. And I was grabbing a lot of offensive rebounds in that game as well, and then kicking it back out too for 3. it still blows my mind that you and I just played those two games on NBA Jam Tournament Edition with you hosting from Australia, and it working that well for us to have that just ridiculously awesome and memorable experience. And that's, like you said, that's what it is. That's what it's about with basketball video games, right? That's why we play. And by the way, that's also why playing co-op and, true head-to-head and whatnot, you just can't beat it. Like using regular teams, whether it's in arcade or you're playing, the simulation games and whatnot, because look at just some of the amazing experiences we've had this year connecting and playing all these different games. It's been wild.
And sharing games that you have set up that I don't, or vice versa as well, as we've been able to. I've said it before on the podcast and in articles, it's kind of like being able to go over to a friend's house and play their collection. Back in the day, you may not have every single game your friend does. So you go over to their house, you sit on the couch or in front of the computer together and play a game they have that you don't. It's really cool.
Right, like you have NBA Live 96 for the PC and I don't. Like I don't have it for the PC. And you were able to share that. And I just got to say something, and we were talking about it during the game. You were just like gushing over it, and I don't blame you. The presentation in NBA Live 96 for PC might be the best basketball presentation for any basketball video game in the history of sports, of basketball video games. Like, the presentation is ridiculous. Just the menu screens, the giant face portraits, the action shots that are in the background during the cut screens, all of that stuff. I am just, revisiting it because I've seen NBA Live 96 PC before because I owned it when I was younger. I'm playing this game with you and I'm looking at all these menus again, and I am just absolutely floored by the presentation. They put so much love into creating that game. I don't know a better word to it. There's they put a lot of heart into creating NBA Live 96 and trying to just make it absolutely blow people away.
No, I think that's a perfect way of putting it, and I love NBA Live 96 PC. It's actually the first NBA Live game I owned. NBA Live 95 was the first game that I played in the series, but it was a video store rental. Back when video stores were a thing, and you didn't necessarily have a big collection. Many of the games, and you can probably relate to this, Civic Video and Video Easy were the local chains here in Australia. Blockbuster, obviously, over there for you being a big one. But renting a lot of games back in the day, and that was what Live 95 for Super Nintendo was for me. And then we got the PC, the family PC, and I started playing more games on PC. And NBA Live 96 came out, and I got that one. And I just remember... So many fun memories of playing that one, even when I had to use a boot disk on the old 486 to get it to to get it to work properly and reboot in strictly in DOS mode to get it with all the extended memory and whatnot to get it to work properly. Just so many great memories with that game. And you're right, that presentation, the jazzy soundtrack. I love that jazzy soundtrack. The gold menus, the buttons, everything, just everything about that presentation. I think to this day, part of me still judges that front-end presentation by NBA Live 96 PC standards, because it is such a nostalgic game for me, and being the first game that I owned, first NBA Live game that I owned, and I would later get Live 95 PC. Saw it down at the newsagents, actually, on sale for $20. Snapped it up. But being that first game, and having that love, as you said, and just that wonderful style, and that really unique jazzy soundtrack and everything, just amazing. And whenever I play it, as soon as that intro came up, what did I say? I said, we have to watch this intro. I'm sorry, we have to take 2 minutes out to watch this intro.
Yeah, we loved it. The action is great, right? Those
Yeah.
highlights are great, just the artistic style around it. And, I have a couple things to say about that. The newer games just don't have that lore, right? I'd say probably the last game that had that lore for menu-wise and intro-wise might have been 2K16 because, sure, I do think that the intro done by Shady for NBA 2K17 was great, and I don't dislike the menus in 2K17. I actually like them, but I'm not floored by them, and they don't draw me in. I'd say probably the last game that had that true lure you in, have you at the edge of your seat presentation between the intro and between the menu system, etc. would, in just overall presentation, would probably be 2K16. But even that just doesn't measure up to what we had on NBA Live 96 PC. I don't know. I don't feel the same lore as far as like the soundtracks go in the newer games. 2K22, you boot it up, and the first thing you hear is 2K TV blaring at you, right? You hear them promoting the game, and you hear like influencers on 2K TV talking to and all that stuff. And I believe you can turn that off in the settings, but that's your first impression of the game, right? You turn on the game and you get that, and there's no like intro like there is with NBA Live 96, and then boom, you got those 2K TV guys. And then, in my opinion, also clunky menus. I'm not a big fan of the menu system in 2K22 either. But yeah, it just blew me away, and just so people know, Andrew hosted this entire night. We played game 2 of our semifinal series on NBA Live 10 for the NBA Live 10 NLSC tournament. Again, I'm using the Nuggets. He's using the Bulls. We had a good game despite some freezes and some crashing at the end. And we also played Double Dribble, which was fantastic. A hilarious amount of missed dunks by you. I've never seen Andrew used Chicago and I used Boston. I have never seen so many missed dunks in one Double Dribble game. I want to say that you missed probably 80% of your dunks. Meanwhile, on the other end, I can't miss. Like I'm hitting all over the floor. It was wild.
I've never seen that many missed dunks in that game either. And you've spent more time with that game than I have. And I know that that's a thing, missing dunks. I mentioned that when I actually covered Double Dribble in my Way Back Wednesday many years ago. Yeah, just so many dunks missed in a row. And it really was getting very comical, getting the offensive board and going up again and just missing and missing. It almost got to the point where I almost wanted to see another dunk missed, because it was getting funny. It was getting really funny to see. And then we were both trying to find the hot spots, trying to do the corner 3 cheese, of course, and then trying to find the half-court hot spots and everything. That's a game that it's still fun to play. Objectively, it doesn't hold up very well these days. It is very primitive. But nevertheless, it's still fun to visit. Like, I wouldn't want to make that a regular part of our sessions, but we were trying to check out some other emulators and whatnot after whatever it is, my PC doesn't seem to like, or the emulator doesn't like my PC for the PlayStation 3 emulator for the tournament when I was hosting. I need to go back and check out these settings, see if I can find something that will get it working. But in any case, we were checking out some other games with the emulator. Started out with the NES, with Double Dribble. And look, that's nostalgic too, obviously, but like I say, it doesn't hold up in the same way as other games, but it is very fun to revisit. Those cutscenes are classic, even when they are missing. But it was just every cutscene that would trigger, after a while, I was thinking, well, here comes another miss. And lo and behold, as you said, about 80% of the time it was.
Yeah. When you took that shot that went off the back of the backboard, and I had to save the highlight. I was like, oh my god. No, I think double dribbles can still be fun from a competitive standpoint.
True.
As far as if you did want to jump on and get competitive with somebody, there's enough differentiation in the gameplay where you can, have a fun competitive game and, have bragging rights and whatnot. It's not something that I would probably make part of a regular session. I agree. Like our regular sessions, I agree. But it's definitely not bad to put on every now and then. Our NBA Live 10 game, though, produced some awesome highlights, despite the issue between your PlayStation 3 emulator and Parsec. For some reason, it's not working very well. You get graphical glitches and whatnot. But there were some amazing dunks. You had a ridiculous move with Derrick Rose into a dunk in the second half, but he had blue arms. So it's kind of hard to put that one in the top 10. But I still thought that was a pretty fun game. Like, even despite all the glitches and the freezing and whatnot.
Well, it's still NBA Live 10, isn't it?
Right, yeah. I mean, it's still NBA Live 10, and, it was working good enough on my end, as far as, like, not having a tremendous amount of input lag, where I was still able to do some stuff. So, I actually enjoyed being on the sticks playing that game, and, I still think that that's pretty good, considering, our distance away from each other.
It is, and of course you are up 2-0 in that series, so I will have some work to do to try to battle back. It now shifts to you hosting, which is probably going to be a smoother experience for as long as the series lasts the rest of the way. You mentioned the 2K14 mod by MillerTime2325. That is an old mod now. He has a 2K17 mod. There might be a newer one as well. There's a couple of people. SKL is also doing some work for Jam Tournament Edition. I think his is the one with Legends in it. I got a bit confused there. I thought there were Legends in the 2K14 mod. I think it might be SKL's that has some Legends and other unlockable characters, special characters that he's put in there. I think he might have put Mike Tyson or someone else in there as well. Again, the level of detail that's gone into that mod, it makes me wish that we could mod the PC version and other versions of Tournament Edition. I mentioned this last week when we were talking about games we wish we could mod. Because so much love and work has gone into that mod. There are some glitches with the portraits, graphical glitches. I might have an old version of that mod as well. I think he might have fixed it up in later releases. But the ratings are pretty good as well. It plays very well. Just to have those updated rosters, such a novelty in a classic, and I love that about bringing old games up to date, or indeed changing new games to have old rosters, modding new games to have old rosters. There's such a novelty in being able to play something so different from a different era in either an old game or a new game.
You know what makes a great roster mod? When you're playing it and you're so immersed into the action that you forget that it's a mod that, that you shouldn't even be playing this, right? Like, you shouldn't even be able to play this. Like, we're playing that game on NBA Jam Tournament Edition, and there is no way in hell we should be using Klay Thompson and Steph Curry in NBA Jam Tournament Edition, right?
Exactly.
Like, there's no way we should be able to do that. But we were so immersed into the action, and we were so into the action, we were using them like we should be using them. We're taking a lot of threes. We're kicking it out for threes off of offensive rebounds and everything, that you forgot you were playing a mod. We were so immersed into it. It's like these guys were part of the original game. And when you can make a mod where it's like the players and the teams and whatnot are like, it feels like they're part of the original game, then you've made yourself an amazing mod. And that's the way I looked at it. I was completely immersed in the action. And the same thing I want to point out when we were playing NBA Live 96. First off, I want to say before I continue, that default camera view that's in NBA Live 96, that should be an option in every single NBA Live game if the series comes back. And it should have been moving forward.
The classic cam.
Oh my God, that camera view is just fantastic. We did have a highlight showing off that cam that made the NLSC top 10, Jordan hitting a three at the buzzer. But I want to go back to this. So Jordan obviously isn't in default NBA Live 96 for PC, but he looks so good on the court, and you have him, as Michael Jordan in the roster and all that stuff. That's your roster mod, right?
That is, yeah.
Am I correct?
Yep,
yeah, it's your roster mod.
The definitive NBA Live 96 mod is still available in the download section for NBA Live 96 PC.
Yeah, and I forgot that he was a mod. During that game that we were playing, I completely forgot that Jordan wasn't in the game, and I'm just playing against you, and I'm treating him like Michael Jordan. He's skying for dunks and all of that stuff. And like I said, that's what makes a great mod. When you can sell it like that, and it's like, this guy looks like he's part of the original game.
That is one of the reasons I love modding those old games, and still have temptations to make some mods here and there. Because it is a lot quicker to make mods for those games, especially with the resources right there with Basketball Reference and whatnot these days. Because when you create players, you don't have to worry about face files. Everyone once you're on the court, everyone really blends in seamlessly with the appearances and everything. He doesn't look created because he's using the same face parts as every other player in that game because of the lack of actual real face textures. But Live 96 PC, the only thing that really doesn't hold up about it is the lack of a steal button. And that really was kind of inexcusable that they did that, because you've got the keyboard, you've got gamepads back in the day that had, yes, most joysticks only had 1 or 2 buttons, but you already had those PC gamepads, like the Gravis gamepad, that had at least 4 buttons, usually 6, like a Super Nintendo controller. A lot of them were based on that, resembled a Super Nintendo controller, or you had a keyboard with many keys at your disposal. That is one of the weaker points of Live 96 PC. But apart from that, I think it holds up extremely well. I was chuffed that we were able to connect on that with DOSBox, because, as I said, I love 96PC. It's a personal favorite, but the fact that I re-enabled joystick support in DOSBox and tested it out. The fact that worked, we had to quit out and restart the game to get it to work properly. But then you calibrated. There were some issues there. But there's also a screen relative option that I never really used back in the day. But even that is in the game.
They couldn't even have that in NBA Live 19, Andrew. They couldn't even have in NBA Live 96 PC, a game that came out 24 years before Live 19. They had a camera relative and absolute options for your controls. That's just wild to me. It shows you how much thought they were putting into the games back then. And then how do you not have that option in NBA Live 19, but you have it in NBA Live 96? I don't know.
I would say that Live 96 almost has better roster management functionality. And the fact there's a PC release.
Oh my God. Oh no, it totally does. Also better appearance during, your roster editing and whatnot. There's two things that I would add to NBA Live 96. A steal button and a dribble move button. Even if it was like plain dribble moves, even if it was like, NBA Live 98 style, like quick dribble move, I think that differentiation would definitely go a long way with that game and allow you to customize a little bit more how you play and add a little bit more of a skill gap with it. But even as it is, that game's pace, reactiveness, even on my end, and I had a little bit of input lag, the pace, the reactiveness, the fun factor, how it feels even to hit a shot, like that hoop is awesome in that game. Like when you hit a shot and it goes through the net, it feels great. I just think they did a lot of good things with that game, and it still holds up.
When you go back and you look at a game like Live 96 PC, I present that as an example of when people say Live was never good or Live was never the brand leader. No. In the golden age of NBA Live, across the board, there were some other games that were doing some great stuff. NBA Shootout / Total NBA here in Australia, and to mention just one. And there were some other early games in that, it makes me feel very old to talk about the early games, the ancient games, because I played them so much growing up. But Live, I think, just did so many great things across the board. And it goes back to what you said, that love and that attention to detail. And when I was talking to Rod Redicott on the podcast last year, he said that the idea was that they just wanted to make the best basketball game possible. And they did. And, not to harp on an issue that we bring up many times, but you look at the way games have gone in recent years. And it's not just basketball games, it's video games in general. But that focus on recurrent revenue and all these other elements that sometimes sacrifice quality or enjoyment for profits or cool points or whatever, or pop culture relevance. It's just a shame that we don't sometimes have that. I don't want to say that the developers aren't putting hard work or love into it, especially when you look at the franchise modes like My NBA, right? Because that's where you see a lot of the love. And yes, you see it in the design of the neighborhood and the city and everything else. A care and attention to detail has gone into those aspects, but there's also those underlying mechanics that just feel... Sinister is not the right word, but there's not that same love and that focus on pure enjoyment, because there's that let's please the suits with the recurrent revenue and whatnot. And that's why you and I like going back and playing these old games where it really is about that pure enjoyment and that pure virtual basketball.
Yeah, NBA Live 96 screams NBA action.
Yeah.
It screams NBA action. It screams NBA, from the rooftops. And that's what we also loved about NBA 2K11, right? NBA 2K11, through its presentation, from what they were trying to do on the, between the lines, gameplay-wise, how they worked on the players in general, how they promoted the game, all of that stuff. NBA 2K11 screams NBA action and screams NBA. And I think we've gotten away from that. I don't think the focus is as much, as we've talked about so many times before. The focus isn't as much on the NBA and, that action between the lines representing, an attempt to represent the real personality of the game and whatnot. And that's disappointing. It's why I love going back and playing, so many of these classic games, is because you can while you're playing it, you can just sense the love that was put in to the making of the games. You can see it.
Absolutely. One thing I neglected to mention, you have to get used to the way we had it set up, using full joystick for turbo. And to that end, it was a good decision, I think, on our part to play that first game with arcade rules, because we were very much sprinting around the court and running into each other and knocking each other down. Normally, when I play NBA Live 96, I'm using a turbo button in addition to shoot and pass and jump block and switch. And you can usually do that when you only have one joystick connected, but because it recognized two joysticks, what it would normally recognize as a second joystick button on my controller to have that turbo control, it wasn't working, which is why I was a bit confused when I was trying to calibrate our joysticks at first, our gamepads rather. I do think that works, the full range of movement, especially with sticks that we have now as well. You're able to make that slight movement on the sticks and not go full joystick and sprint if you don't want to. But we got used to it. It's obviously a bit harder for you with that little bit of input lag over Parsec, but we made it work. I'm keen to play it again. Whenever I fire up Live 96 and I see first that intro and then I see the main menu with the ticket coming out, the ticket being dispensed, it just brings back all those memories, so many fun memories with that game of both modding it and playing it. It is the game that I was playing when my family got the internet and I first went on to Alta Vista, not Google, Alta Vista, searched for NBA Live 96, found this site called the NBA Live Series Center. 24 years later, I'm running it and have been for 20 of those years. So 96 is very special to me, and I was very glad we were able to play that, and we'll be able to play other games. You know, I've got 98, 99 installed as well. I do need to get 2003 and 2004 working again with Windows 10. Need to do some extra steps to get them working properly because of the DRM that is no longer supported by Windows 10. Got to get some hacks to get around that. But I'd love to play those games as well, because the PC versions of those games got some great mods still for those. I'd love to get on there with you and play with those mods.
A couple things. We'll definitely have to do that. That was funny when you messaged me. So I use the Houston Rockets. By the way, I don't care what anybody says. I love that branding.
Same.
I love that court.
Yeah.
I love JAMA jerseys. I don't care what anybody says. I think they rock. Like, I really like the look of them. But I threw alley-oop to Clyde Drexler off of a loose ball around half court, and he threw it down. And you messaged me. You're like, top 10. And that's what the top 10 has really changed my gaming experiences, to be honest, and the way I play the games. I think it's changed the way you look at playing the games as well, because you're always looking for that next highlight and that next submission. And I've had some of the people who submit the highlights, VF Baller for one, state the same thing, where like you're playing these games and you find yourself saying top 10, or is this good enough to be top 10, etc. And I just think that's really cool. We had a really good top 10 this week, actually, with the Live King taking the number one spot. I want to let people know, though, how cool this is. So I posted a picture, actually, of me, and I posted this on Twitter, playing Double Dribble with Andrew from my couch. And, the ability to sit on my couch with an Xbox One controller, an Xbox One wireless controller, by the way, that's what I use on my PC, to be able to sit on my couch with an Xbox One wireless controller, playing games like Double Dribble, NBA Live 96 with Andrew, NBA Live 10, doing the Live 10 tournament, connecting with, at B-Ball video games and playing NBA 2K10 and all of this stuff, being able to do that from my couch on like a 50-inch screen and just being able to play like I'm playing in the room with them and etc. How awesome is that? Like, every time I'm doing it, I get reminded of how awesome that is, that I can do this. I mean, playing NBA Live 96 with an Xbox One wireless controller, with my friend from Australia, it just blows my mind.
And it's also the choices we have. Because, look, you and I could jump on 2K22 and play each other. I've been playing some 2K22 on PS5, and I was glad to see that version of the game get some highlights in the top 10, because it's nice that people are enjoying the latest game. Ideally, we do want to enjoy the latest game every year, and I have been playing some games with classic teams in NBA 2K22 on PS5, having some fun with that, sending you a few highlights here and there, but being able to dip into our collections, as we said before, is just so special, and play games that either never had online support or don't have online support anymore.
No, it's amazing. And I've been playing 2K22. My brother and I, yes, I brought up my brother again. My brother and I just finished playing game number 75 of our my NBA. I posted a video on my YouTube of of me jumping back into my team and completing the Bucks domination challenge, and I posted the highlights from all those 3 games on my YouTube and on Twitter. So I got my money's worth with 2K22. Okay, and I am still playing it. I still can't believe it's only been out for a couple months. It feels like it's been out for a year, and I don't think that's a good sign. But I am still playing it. And but nothing beats going back and playing those old games and those old mods. Nothing beats it. Shout out to VF Baller, one of our regular contributors to the NLC Top 10 and a fan of the show. He messaged me tonight and he goes, "Live 06, man, wow." And he was like, "It's better than I thought." And I think that's just one of my favorite things about not only posting the top 10, but posting those gameplay videos on your YouTube, on the NLSC YouTube, and then on my YouTube and whatnot, is because our listeners and our watchers, the people that actually watch the videos and whatnot, can be reminded about how great some of these games were, right? And it can inspire them to maybe think about playing basketball video games the way they used to, or in a way that they hadn't thought of before. And it maybe will inspire them to revisit old titles or try new titles. Try some of those old titles that they didn't visit when they were first new, when they first came out. So there's just been a lot. It's been a great year of not only retro gaming, but showing off those retro games. And I think it's going to be a great year in 2022 as well.
I'm inclined to agree 100%. And I think there is value, and I've said this before, there is value in going back and revisiting those games and dispelling the myths around them. 06 being a big one. We've talked about that a lot in recent weeks because it's been such a retro kick for us again. And it's great to hear that from VF Baller, and shout out to you because you're always such a supporter of our content, and Teddy Bear the Gamer and Lady Culture, so many regulars that offering up some nice comments and checking out our content every week. But I do think it is important to document games and dispel these myths and have that accurate picture of them. I think it's worth in our community having that accurate view of history. It also gives us an idea of what to suggest moving forward, gives us a clearer picture. We can learn from the past, and we hope the developers learn from the past as well, and we can make suggestions based on that. But it is just so rewarding to go back to those games and either get some closure on them or create some new memories with them. And people say, why play them? Why play an old game? But at the same time, people will talk about being very frustrated with the latest game, with 2K22 or 2K21 last year. And if you're not enjoying the latest game, but you still want to play basketball, go back to an old favorite.
Not everything's got to be online, people.
That too.
I mean, come on. You go back and play these old games. Hell, Andrew and I could play a season on NBA Live 96 if we wanted to, right? I mean, we still have season mode. It still tracks stats. Like, a lot of the stuff that you're getting out of the newer games isn't new. Like, the idea isn't new. And it doesn't mean that you have to play solo either. You could find somebody to play with. You could connect with people online using something like Parsec or a similar program. You connect on Steam Play together. Maybe you use that avenue or route or whatnot. There is still so much content in those old games that you can really enjoy, and stuff that can keep you playing them. Like we've talked about on a past podcast, on a couple of them, Andrew and I are going to be playing an NBA Live 06 season on the same team, the Xbox 360 version. And what are we going to get out of that season? A lot of the same stuff you get out of the new games. We're going to be it's going to be tracking stats. We're going to have awards. We're going to go into the playoffs, all of that stuff. So, there's still a lot of content to sink your teeth into and a lot of tracking in those older games.
No doubt. And as far as NBA Live 96 PC is concerned, we may not end up playing a season, but I would love to play some more exhibition games with you. I've created a 2001 season mod. I created it back in the day, back in the 2001 season was going on. Had some help that even added some new portraits to the game, adjusted the jersey colors so some of the jerseys look more up to date. As I said, custom portraits, even some of the gold team names in the roster screens. I forget who did it, and I hate that because for some reason they weren't included in the credits. Talk about a big faux pas on my part back in the day, but they did contribute some of those art updates as well, which weren't as common back then. So it was I called it the complete update was it the complete update for NBA Live 96? I actually updated it. I think a year or two ago. I actually finished the season because my last release was around the trade deadline. And I must have got NBA Live 2001 or something at that time finally come out and playing that on PC. So I stopped updating that roster. But I actually completed it within the last couple of years to the end of the season rosters and released that. So I'd love to play that with you and show you that old mod that I made. And, I hope you do pick up NBA Live 96 PC because there are some pretty cheap copies, just disc-only copies available on eBay. So if you do feel inclined, our modding tools for it still work. So we could still do some retro modding and showcases and do some cool stuff with that NBA Live 96 PC over Parsec.
I might be interested in doing something like that. We could collaborate and whatnot. Were you able to mod any of the courts?
I think the EA graphics editor does allow it, but the latest version might not open them properly because it had a specific format that some of those early games don't open properly with the latest version. We might need to track down a really old version of the EAGE to do that. But it is actually possible to. I mean, you can up the textures, you can open them up, so it might be possible.
Yeah, if we could figure out how to change the team names and do some courts and whatnot, I might even be interested in trying to do like a classic teams mod in that game. Imagine having the portraits in there too, of all the different players and logos and whatnot. There have been some, retro rosters being made in the community. They were working on a 95-96 roster for 2K22. Culture is, I think she's Culture Games now on the NLSC. She's been working on a 2K5 mod for NBA 2K11. I believe Thundershack is still working on his 2K20, doing updates to that onto his his retro seasons and classic teams mod and whatnot. So there's still a lot of retro stuff going on in the community, but you don't see a lot of modding of those 90s games anymore. And I understand that. So yeah, it would be cool to release some new mods for some of those 90s lives.
Somebody actually updated a 2020 season, uploaded rather, a 2020 season roster for Live 95 PC. I haven't checked it out yet, but I've seen some of the previews, and it looks pretty good. And that's something I would have loved to have done for the 25th anniversary of Live. Actually, I never got around to it because I was busy with other projects and articles, obviously, that I was doing for those celebrations. But those games, so much nostalgia in modding them as well. The tools, I do think the 95 editor does need, because it's a 16-bit program, it does need to be run with under a virtual machine because it won't run on Windows 10 64-bit. But we can find ways around that.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. I feel like we can figure out how to get any game to work really with enough research and the knowledge and tools and whatnot. I do want to ask our listeners too before we close this segment. What games would you say you wish you had spent more time with when they were out? And if you didn't own some of these past games that we're discussing and ones we haven't discussed, which games do you wish you had visited when they first came out, and which games would you like to go back and revisit go back and visit that you were never able to play before? Because I know that not all of our listeners have played the games we're discussing. I know that a lot of our listeners haven't played NBA Live 96 PC. They've probably played NBA Live 96 for, the Super NES or Sega Genesis, or for PlayStation. So there's definitely differences between the versions, especially in the presentation elements.
No, that's a great question. We love the interaction we've been having with our listeners as of late. So let us know, and also let us know if there's any other games you'd like us to dip into our collection and play. Obviously, there's going to be some that are in our rotation because they're our retro kick, and we know that they work very well. But let us know if you'd like us to showcase some other games as well.
Some mic'd up videos. We got to do it.
We do.
We have to at some point find a way. I actually have some free time. I'm taking a work vacation December 6th to December 12th. I want to say. So I'm taking roughly a week off. During that week, we should get a couple mic'd up sessions in there and we got to play some games that aren't that great. because I think that would be really funny, and I think it would be worth. I think it would give people some laughs.
I think so too, and I still want one of those games to be kids sports basketball on PS2, just because that is so terrible, and we can riff on that one all day.
Oh no, I'm up for that. I have a couple other ideas too for games that I think just are absolutely not the. Let's put it this way: not the greatest basketball games you've ever played.
But there's value in revisiting them just to have a laugh.
Oh no, 100%. I mean, here's the thing. I think ribbing on games that are clearly not functional as fun basketball video games, I don't think there's any shame in that. Companies that made these games made a lot of design errors, a lot of functionality errors, and these games don't function properly as basketball video games, and as a result, they're not very fun. So I don't think there's anything to feel bad about as far as like ribbing on some of these games.
Well, some of the companies aren't even around anymore, so there you go.
I know what they're going to do. Come after us.
Yeah.
No, take that down. Take that video down.
We'll never make a basketball game again. Well, you shouldn't. So we're doing everybody a favor here. But definitely hit us up with those suggestions about games you'd like to see us play. And once again, we love the interaction. Some very nice comments recently. Lady Culture, Jacqueline, Culture Games, has mentioned sharing the show with some of her friends. And, shout out to everybody there in the city of brotherly love who is enjoying the NLSC podcast.
No, absolutely. At any time I think of Philadelphia, I think of Rocky. So I think of the Rocky movies, some of my favorite movies of all time. And then second after Rocky, I think of Allen Iverson.
Well, now I have my 2K14 my career that I enjoyed so much, the 76ers.
I created a cyberface, Andrew, for Rocky Balboa, if you remember correctly.
Indeed, yes.
For NBA 2K21 that works in 2K22. I'm just saying, if you want to put him on the Philadelphia 76ers, go for it. I mean, I'll convert him to 2K22 for you. I'll make sure it works. And maybe you can, throw him on the floor and make him a champion on the basketball court as well.
Absolutely. And we love the interaction. And to that point, it is time for the NLC Podcast Listener Mailbag.
To the mailman, the pump fake. What an unbelievable dunk!
So first up this week is Eros. Shout out to you and thank you for emailing in this question and this topic to discuss. It is the topic of paid mods versus free mods. And as he correctly points out in his email, it is something that we feel very strongly about. It says, I'd like to hear a discussion about the issue of paid mods versus free mods in the NBA 2K community. I'm pretty sure we know where both of you stand on this, but I won't assume. I think there's a way this could be discussed from both sides, even from a devil's advocate point of view. I personally feel there's too many mods these days being released behind paywalls, but I've heard pretty compelling reasons from some modders and why they do charge. Do either Andrew or Dee have any strong feelings either way on this topic? Is it an old school versus new school thing? Is it a geographical thing? Why is there such an increase in paid mods? What reason would you give someone who doesn't charge for mods released not to start? And what would you say to convince someone who charges for mods that they shouldn't? We have discussed this before, as I said, but those are the pertinent questions to ask when we deal with this issue, Derek.
Yeah, so, look, I understand the mindset. This is the devil's advocate approach of, I spent the X amount of hours creating this work, and I feel like all of that time I should be paid for. But the work that you're creating is for a game that is not your intellectual property, right? And there are actually legalities around this. You can't sell somebody else's work based on somebody else's intellectual property. That's actually illegal. So it's not just frowned upon. From my knowledge, it's actually illegal. Taking donations is not. If somebody wants to donate to you personally, not for a specific work, but to you as a modder, there is nothing illegal about that. A tip jar is okay. And from talking with a few modders on the NLSC as well, people who have PM'd me, etc., they do get donations. If those people show good work in the community or they take on a big project, they will get donations. And I've even had multiple people, and I've talked to you about this in the past, actually, when it's happened. I've had multiple people reach out to me, direct message on the NLSC, asking me if I had a tip jar, or asked if they could send me money to keep my 2K17 projects going, or for my work on my 2K17 projects. They wanted to donate to me, the modder, right? So if it's looked at as a donation, there's nothing wrong with that. But selling your mods is illegal. Am I wrong in saying that?
No, it is modding is kind of a tricky area from a legal standpoint to begin with. It kind of comes down to the parties involved, including, of course, the developer not taking any action. And we talked last week about how Take-Two has been taking action against GTA modders and how that's kind of concerning when they're doing that, because that is under the same umbrella as NBA 2K. But they have
just talked about last show, right? We talked about that being scary on the last show, and that's why I even brought it to your attention.
Exactly. But it is illegal because you are profiting off licenses that you don't own and intellectual property that you don't own. So there is definitely a legal reason why we don't allow charging for mods, and why you shouldn't, and why tip jars kind of work under that grey area of, as long as you're not directly charging for it and just putting it out there, that everyone who could potentially take legal action is turning a blind eye to it. There's also other aspects to consider as far as payment is concerned with modding. You use tools that other people are providing for free. You're using a platform to distribute mods that you're usually using for free. Now you might say, well, Andrew, okay, you're paying for the NLSC's hosting. We just won't use the NLSC. We'll use Facebook. We'll use Discord. We'll use whatever. Okay, but you're still using a free service. You're using Facebook for free. And admittedly, they are a multi-billion-dollar corporation, so they can afford it.
And terrible. But yes, continue.
True. But that or Discord, all that is, you want to use something for free, tools, a hosting platform, a distribution platform, other people's work, images that you source online. You're not paying for any of that, and yet you want to profit 100% from it, just because of your work. And that is not to disparage your work, but you are using things that you want to get for free and make money off them. That's not fair.
Well, what's funny is these people, there is something that's not illegal, but it's strongly discouraged in the community because of the hassles it can cause, including giving people viruses, malware, etc. Is people do use things like AdFly, right?
Yeah.
They use site services that, they get paid for clicks for people to download their mod. Now, from my understanding and everything that I've read about this, there is no law against that, right? That's, using a third-party site and getting paid for clicks. But, there's multiple ways for people to get benefits for their work compensation-wise without charging for the mods, okay? So, like, tip jars, we've talked about. You produce quality work, people a lot of times will donate. I've had people reach out to me to do so for my 2K17 work and whatnot. And then, obviously, like we talked about, those AdFly links, which we strongly discourage, that is a way that some modders in the community, including one who said that he was doing pretty well with those links, that's another way. So the people are getting money off of clicks. But, like you said, you're not allowed to sell mods, sell somebody else's, based on somebody else's intellectual property. And, you talk about the devil's advocate approach. I understand as a modder how long it takes to make some of these mods.
Same, yeah.
My 2K7, listen, I get it. My 2K17 Ultimate Classic Teams roster, I can show you my time on the game too on Steam, took thousands of hours to make. Between the cyber faces, the body modifications, the conversions of quartz, making all the teams, the logos, all of that stuff. It took thousands of hours. I get it. Making a single cyber face, like I made a cyber face recently for 2K22, and that cyber face took me about 5 hours. 5 or 6 hours, just that one cyber face. And there's some of these creators are pushing out, a couple cyber faces a day. People like Razor, who used to be part of the community, him and I have talked about the time it takes to make a quality face. It just takes a very long time. So yes, I understand that approach of, you know what, I'm putting in the hours. You know, I'm doing all of this work for the community to enjoy, and you know, I feel I deserve something in return. But that's not what the modding community is about either. It's supposed to be an open source community where we're all sharing our work and just trying to get the most out of these games collectively. Correct? It's not about making a profit. That's not modding. Isn't a bit like, you're not in the business of modding, right? You're not in the business of modding for profit. What you should be in is the business of creating free open source mods for the community. And I want to point something out too before I throw it back over to you. The best mods that I have ever used have been free. The best mods, the best roster mods, the best cyberface mods, all of that have been free. The UBR, the URB, you know, those mods, when I downloaded them, completely free full roster mods. Amazing cyberface mods in there, court mods, all of that stuff. The roster mods for NBA 2K11 that I've talked about on the podcasts, the 91-92 roster, the 96-97 roster, the 2K10 96-97 roster, 02-03. Just some of the faces listed in, you know, some of the faces created that were released in the community for free, the courts, the presentation mods by Michael V. Lutz. All of that stuff, the best mods that I've ever used have been free. There's another thing about the community that just kind of drives me nuts. Certain people will say, you know, well, the best mods are behind a paywall. Well, the best mods are, you know, being charged for all that stuff. You got to pay for the best mods. I don't find that to be the case at all. I really don't.
There have been many tremendous mods, free of charge, released over the years. And it does speak to that, to what Eros said, that old school versus new school mentality. But before I get into that, once again, yes, the legal issues here. Charging for properties that you don't own, licenses, likenesses that you don't own, using tools that you didn't make and got for free, and platforms that you were able to use for free as well to distribute your mods and to advertise them, and using other people's work, because we've seen a lot of people try to charge for mods using work that has been contributed to them, and those contributors are not getting a share of those profits. So there's a lot of reasons, legally, morally, ethically, that you don't do that. But it is an old school versus new school thing, because when we were founded, way back in the day, back in 1996, you know, we just distributed mods for free. It was about creating something cool for yourselves and and sharing it for your fellow gamers as well. Back in the day for NBA Live 96 PC or NBA Live 95 PC, it was about putting Michael Jordan and Charles Barkley in the game, and for 95 also David Robinson as well, as he was absent from that game because he was exclusive to NBA Action 95. So it was about doing that for yourselves and your fellow gamer, and putting those tools out there so that other people could do that themselves. And it's the same with other modding communities, like the Doom mods, you know, the custom mods for Doom back in the day, and the modding scene for other games, Duke Nukem, whatever. It was about putting that out there for the community. And of course, there wasn't the avenues to make money as there is now. You didn't really have that you didn't have PayPal to easily transfer money to somebody, and you didn't have Patreon, you didn't have these other ways of monetizing it. And of course, a lot of people have made a living being content creators online. YouTubers, for example. It is possible to create a career being an online content creator.
If you make good content for YouTube and you're displaying some of these free mods and you get a lot of subscribers and whatnot, and you're able to monetize your channel, you know, there's the Dom 2Ks of the world out there, right? That's just another avenue. You know, you go on, you know, you become a content creator. People love, you know, the mods that you're showcasing and all of that stuff. And boom, you're getting a ton of views on your videos and everything. And that's just another avenue where, you know, you could technically make money without charging for the mod.
Oh, absolutely. And as far as why you shouldn't start or why you should stop doing it, the reason we put that out there, we wanted that work to be enjoyed by everybody. And imagine you are a young gamer in the basketball gaming community, and you want to use these cool mods, but you don't have a lot of disposable income. And yet you have to, these mods are behind a paywall. How would you feel? You know, and of course it's also limiting your work to people who want to or are capable of paying for it. There's that aspect of of fairness and fair play to charging for mods, on top of the legal ramifications, and the culture is so important in the modding community. And I've heard about the PC versions of WWE 2K that a lot of the mods and modding tools are paid for, and there's a lot of toxicity. And of course, if you charge for a mod and then people aren't happy with the work, aren't satisfied with that commission, then how are you going to handle that? And if that's in a community like ours, are you going to bring me into, or you and I being moderators in the forum, are you going to bring us in there to moderate this dispute? And are you going to contribute to us for our time to moderate this dispute? I mean, there's just so many reasons, legal, ethical, moral, to not charge for mods. It brings such toxicity into a modding community that it's just not something we can support. We're not going to do it for legal reasons, obviously, but it just opens up such a can of worms. So many other issues come out of charging for mods that it just ruins a modding community.
I got a couple things to say about that too. As far, I'm going to play devil's advocate again, Eris, and this is one thing that I've definitely heard before from a couple people in the community, is they say, well, they charge for DLC, right? So downloadable content, like you'll see that on Steam, oh, you want this new armor set, DLC. Oh, you want these new players in this tennis game, you want to unlock, let's say, Rafael Nadal, we'll put him, you have to pay $5 to unlock Rafael Nadal to put him in the game. But that DLC is being provided by the game, the company that owns the intellectual property and the licenses for that downloadable content, right? That's not the same as a modder selling intellectual property and licenses that they don't own, right? So that's a way to look at it. Like, I've heard that brought up. Well, they charge for DLC. Well, that's coming from the company itself. Who owns those?
And don't we also hate DLC and microtransactions? So why are we trying to replicate that?
Right, we do. Why are we trying to replicate? Exactly. We hate DLC, but because we have to pay for it, and it's ridiculous. Why are we trying to duplicate that? Why didn't that come with the original game? Why isn't that free? All of that stuff. And then the other aspect of this too is, just like I got a little scared when I saw the Grand Theft Auto thing, the company going after modders. Is that really what you want? Like, I want you to think about this. So if we allowed modders to charge, first off, pretty much everybody would be doing it, in my opinion. Like, most people would be doing it. Like, I know that the guys that work on the 2K19 project still do, Peaceman not, all of that stuff. They wouldn't. Like, they wouldn't charge for mods. And I know that Thundershack wouldn't charge for mods. I wouldn't charge for mods. You wouldn't. But, I believe that the majority of the community would catch on, and then they would start charging for mods. Do you know, Eros, how fast we would be shut down if everybody was allowed to charge for mods and they were doing it? We would be shut down. I would give it a month. I got to be honest with you. If the NLSC allowed their users to charge for mods, and the majority of our users were doing it, and they're putting all of these, mods behind a paywall, I believe truly that we would be shut down in a month, because the NLSC is often looked at by developers, by members of the 2K and EA Sports teams, etc. Do you think we would even last a month if we allowed it?
I'd see us getting shut down very quickly. I'd see the lawyers. I'd be getting the C&D very quickly.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the point. Is that what we want? So, like, I don't think the risk is worth it. I understand the legalities around it, and what's allowed and what isn't, and everything. So I think hopefully that answers your questions.
Yeah, I think we all stand on the shoulders of giants as far as the people that came before us and made the modding tools, and I've been around for that time, so I've seen modders come and go. I've seen tool makers come and go, and I know how important they are to the community. And there's always that issue with, well, you allowed Vlad to charge for Redditor, Red MC, and it was basically kind of retroactively commissioning him to make software. And look, that wasn't ideal, but the choice was, okay, we either allow this or we have no editors for 2K. So, and tools are kind of different. But that being said, we always encourage those tools to be free. And now, of course, Vlad has gone on to get a job at Visual Concepts at 2K, has made those editors completely free. So, as we always hoped. So, yeah, it's about being fair to the community, putting yourself in other people's shoes and realizing, well, no, I wouldn't want to pay $10 for a Cyberface or something like that.
Right.
Think about what would be fair for you, and that's what's fair for others.
Right, and I hope you appreciate the people who do it right in the community. I hope that you appreciate being able to log on to the NLSC, or not even log on, just go into the download session. But we hope you log on because we want you to be a member. But when you jump onto the NLSC and you go into these modding sections or into the download section and whatnot, and boom, you can pluck a mod right out of there, throw it in your game, and you can enjoy it. And I think that that's the way the community was founded. Those were, the practices that were encouraged way back then. And whether you want to call it old school or not, we're calling it what's right, right?
Good values, yeah.
We're just saying it's what's right and what should be done. So, I know that I always appreciate being able to release mods and know that people can just go and download them and throw them in their game and have that extra fun experience. And then I also appreciate the modders who do that as well.
Absolutely. But thank you for that topic. It is one that we obviously do have very strong feelings about, and it's an issue that we need to discuss because it is a recurring issue, is it not, Derek? And that old school versus new school thinking and the way the community has changed. And there are people who do advocate for the charging of mods, and I do think they overlook or certainly try to downplay some of those very legitimate reasons not to charge.
I do. I think the last thing I'll say about this is don't approach modding like a income stream,
like a vocation,
okay?
Like a job, yeah.
Exactly. Don't approach it that way. Approach it to the way in a way that I'm going to make the best experience possible for the community. I'm going to build a reputation in the community that is strong, and whatever comes after that is just because I operated the correct way, right? Whether it be tips, whether it be you become a content creator, all of that stuff, just act right, and the majority of the time you will get the benefits of acting right, even though you shouldn't be expecting benefits to act right anyway. But, just be a good person and be a good community member. I'll just say that.
And my final word on it is, think of things that you use for free, like a browser extension, that blocks ads. You're using that for free and also taking away somebody else's revenue from a site or from a YouTube channel. So think about doing that and then turning around and wanting to charge for your work. Just keep it in mind.
Yeah, exactly. But no, thank you for the question. We have talked about it before on the podcast, but I think it's always good to revisit.
And finally this week we have some questions from Jacqueline, Lady Culture Gaming. Shout out to you. It is also about modding. It says, you both have many years and many different games of modding under your belts. You've both even completed your own solo mod projects. So I think you're both as qualified as anyone to answer this. Do you have any tips on not getting burned out in general, finding the motivation to get through finishing a project, dealing with the stress and strain it puts on your eyes, etc., and overcoming the urge to keep tinkering and never completing? Any tips, methods, wisdom would be appreciated. The past year has really taken a toll on me, spreading myself a bit too thin on so many different projects, and going forward, I'm just trying to find a smart way to proceed. Yeah, this is definitely something we can speak to as well, getting burned out after working on a big project. I mean, you look at how I've been struggling to get that 2K11 roster project done, and I can speak to a lot of these issues on burnout and wanting to get everything completed and hitting frustrating points and also being pulled in different directions by other modding projects. So I think this is something that people do struggle with, Derek, when they are working on a very big modding project.
I think you could agree with this. I'd say probably half or more of the big roster projects that somebody announces in the community never gets finished.
Easily, yeah.
I would say maybe even 3/4 of those projects. So you're not alone, obviously. So that's number one. Number two, so like I said, my 2K17 project took me thousands of hours to get done. Stepping away is a good idea, because if you're not enjoying making the project and you're not looking forward to the next edit that you make, you're not going to want to do it. And if you're getting that way early on in the process of a project, then you may want to cancel the idea of doing that project altogether. One thing that helped me out a lot on NBA 2K17 is planning a day to really go at the mod. And maybe you operated that way in the past, but like I'll look at it. I looked at it as this. Let's say Saturday was coming around the corner and I knew I had it off from work. Let's say my brother was working the majority of the day and I basically had the apartment to myself. I would make it a point to get up, grab a cup of coffee, sit on my couch, and literally do, I'm not kidding, like 8 hours of work on that mod that one day. And just have it in my mind that I was going to get as much done in that one day as I possibly could. And sometimes in 8 hours, if you really, if you're really focused and for the majority of that day you're working on it, you can get done. Let's say you're doing a roster project, you might be able to get done multiple teams in that day as far as like ratings, attributes, etc., maybe renaming the players, plugging in logos, all of that stuff. And that was always super motivating for me, getting all of that work done in that one day. And it would make me look forward to the next time that I had a day where I could spend that much time on the project. So I don't know if that helps you or not, but really being able to set aside a good chunk of time instead of constantly jumping around and saying, oh, well, I'll do this edit, this, I have a half hour here, I'll do this edit. Or, you know what, I'll plug in these faces or whatnot for this hour, and then I'll go do something else. Instead of jumping around, really set the time aside to sit in front of your computer, whether it be on the couch or in a computer chair or whatnot, and really focus on the project and get some serious work done. And that really helped my brother and I, who actually worked on this project, because we both kind of did the same thing. When I wasn't around, when I was at work, he would set hours aside during that day and say, you know what, I'm going to get this done before D gets home. And then we just attack it in chunks, and we'd usually get a lot done that way.
Time management is vital, and I'm with you. And that's something that I would do when I was working on the NBA Live PC roster updates back in the day. You set aside that day that today I'm just going to do modding. I've got nothing else to do, no other obligations, no social plans, whatever. I've got this to myself to do whatever I want, to play on a mod. I want to get this mod done, so I'm just going to go ham on this, finishing this mod, or getting a big chunk out of the way. And when you get those big chunks out of the way, as you said, that's when you feel that sense of completion. It spurs you on to keep working on the mod because you get over those fiddly bits or something that's a lot of work, like maybe updating years pro or updating salaries or changing names, as you said. Something that's tedious. If you just push through that, and if you've worked in data entry or anything like that, sometimes it becomes easier because you're used to doing some tedious work in computing. But definitely set aside that time to do that. Also, do take breaks. Get up, walk around. Basic ergonomics here, as far as and that certainly is as far as eye strain and everything. If you do have problems with eye strain, there are special glasses and whatnot that you can wear that will reduce glare and whatnot from screens. But it is important to every so often when you're working, whether it's writing, modding, or whatever, or even gaming. That is why there are warnings on games to take a break every so often to do that. So definitely don't push yourself to breaking point. Just as you're supposed to do that when you're working on any kind of, and we said modding is not a job, but when you are putting that much time into it in front of a computer, do take care of your health like that. There's something that I'll suggest that I was pretty bad about, and it really burned me out on modding, was trying to finish a project completely. And sometimes there are projects, especially current roster updates, where it's okay to release a version 1.0 and then keep releasing those small updates, or a demo version or something like that. There was a time when I would release roster updates and add a few rookies each time. Like, this update has the next 20 rookies that have just come through this off-season. The next update will include more rookies. These are the faces I have already, or these are the players that I've had time to create. Go nuts with this off-season roster. One of the reasons I stopped was I started placing too much stock and getting too worked up, I guess, about people who were saying, "Oh, you forgot to add this person or that person," because they weren't reading the release notes that said first 20 rookies of the first round have been added, more to come. So I was getting sick of answering those questions and explaining myself. So I decided, okay, you know what? I'm just going to make sure that I add all the rookies. And that's a bigger workload. And so instead of releasing a few updates that are demo updates or sequential updates that add bits and pieces over the off-season, you're trying to add this complete roster, which is also very hard during the off-season because you have so many signings and players that are signing that are not even going to make it through training camp, and you're trying to get faces for them and whatnot. It's just so much an extra workload to do. And people would say, if the rosters are if you're so burnt out on the rosters, why don't you just release a couple each year? And that doesn't actually reduce the workload. And sometimes it actually increases it. So sometimes releasing a beta version, a demo version here and there, and it also may encourage people to help out with the project because they can see it coming together. It gives something to play with in the meantime. You feel good about getting some kind of release out there, and it encourages you to release more work. Now, it can work against you where you feel that you've released that beta version, so I've already released something, so sometimes it can work against you in that respect. But I think that's something to consider, that you can always do a version 2.0 or 1.1 or whatever.
You said fiddly bits. You are an old man.
Yeah.
Fiddly bits. Oh, man. No, so here, I agree with that. I actually feel like I made a mistake a little bit with 2K17 with my roster project because I didn't really release a V1 early enough. I wanted to make sure that it was more complete, so I didn't get those complaints that you talk about from people who didn't read the fine print, like, oh, this player wasn't done accurately, etc. I did end up releasing a V1 later on, and then a V2, and then now a V3 and whatnot. And I'm very happy with the V3 and how that came out. I have a couple of other things that I wanted to say too, as far as advice. Show your work. That will definitely add to the motivation to finish the project. So, I talked about spending that large chunk of time on a project. Let's say you get 2 teams done in that busy day of modding. Put a YouTube video together, throw those 2 teams on the court, whether you do CPU versus CPU, or whether you're, or whether you're playing against the computer or whatnot, or it's you and your boyfriend or whatnot, doesn't matter. Get on the sticks, make a gameplay video, post that, embed that video on the NLSC saying, hey, here are the 2 teams we've added. Here's some of that action. Maybe upload a video to your YouTube. I know you have a YouTube, etc. And that adds to the motivation. That gives something people to look at. That gives something for people, people can cheer for. It gives something, and it gives you something to keep you motivated as far as looking at, hey, look how good these teams look on the floor with all of this art. Look at how these teams are playing. And if you go through my 2K17 Ultimate Classic Teams roster thread, you'll see me posting gameplay videos, posting screenshots of my updates, telling people what I'm going to be working on next, asking for some input, for some input from the community. All of that stuff helps you stay motivated, right? So be more interactive with the community. And I think that it can be harder on older games that are not the newest title because there's not as many people in those sections. But that shouldn't discourage you from making those posts and posting those updates, because there still are, and you know this from seeing the site statistics, there are still quite a few people that look into those sections.
Definitely.
The problem is that the reason why people aren't commenting as much is because people aren't posting enough in those sections. So get that content out there when you make updates, and it will motivate you based on the community's feedback and what people say too, to continue forward. You mentioned something that I think resonated with me in a big way, is you said, jumping from game to game and project to project. Here's my advice on that. Mod the game you like the most and finish that project first. My 2K17 project got finished. All 3 of my projects, the fantasy draft roster, which I have to re-release, all-time teams roster, I have to re-release, and my released Ultimate Classic Teams roster. I finished those projects and put the blood, sweat, and tears into those projects because I loved NBA 2K17. That is the game that I loved the most. That is the game that I wanted to play the most. It's the game that I wanted to share with the community the most. Go with the game that you love the most. So if it's 2K, I know that you have 2K11 and 2K14 going on right now. Which one do you enjoy putting on the most? That's the game that you want to work on right now.
that focus is so important. And it is easy to get drawn towards other projects. You get new ideas that are appealing. And when you first start doing that prep work for new rosters in particular, that's the exciting part, because you're just moving some players around and getting pieces getting pieces set up to make those rosters, and you're not getting to the tedious part of data entry and changing ratings and assigning animations and all kinds of things that hold you back, because that's the lengthy part of the project. So it is about focusing on that project you're passionate about for a game that you're passionate about. With that being said, I do have some contradictory advice to offer up here, which is if you are also capable of working on some smaller mods here and there, just things that you can be whipped up very quickly in half an hour or so, and quality work can be whipped up very quickly, then sometimes you can, if you want to take a break from the fiddly bits, the tedious parts of a big roster project, just to put out a small texture update or a small little hack or something that people can use, then that will also satisfy your need to get some work out there. It will also take a break from, but it'll change up from the tedious work that you're doing with something else that's different, that's perhaps more enjoyable, and again that you can complete that a bit quicker and put that out there, and then get right back to work. As long as you're able to get right back into that project, then that's what you need to do. You need, as you said, Derek, you need to avoid taking on multiple big projects at the same time. You can by all means have a list of modding ideas. I actually have them, and put them on the back burner, but don't start anything new until you're so close to completion.
Can I point something out? So that's a different type of sidetracking that I can encourage if you really want to. If you're like, you know what, I haven't posted in the community in a while, and I want to get some work out there, yep. And maybe people will enjoy this. So I want to give an example of where I did this. So it was discovered by me and Trevor through a long process how to convert cyber faces from 2K18 to 2K17, if you remember that. And what I did was I was doing these conversions for my next release of my Ultimate Classic Teams roster, but I said, you know what? I'm doing these conversions. Maybe the community could use these faces that I'm using for this roster, before I release the roster. Maybe they want to plug them in. So what I did was I had a 2K18 to 2K17 conversion thread where I created the 2K18, Kevin Garnett to 2K17, etc. Mr. Stars, Derek Fisher, which he gave me the okay to do. I converted his 2K18 to Derek Fisher to 2K17. Those ended up in my Ultimate Classic Teams roster, but I released those faces before the official roster release so people could have some content, right? So I could have my name out there so people could use that content, and so I could continue posting on the NLSC. So if you have mods that you've worked on and have created for 2K11, let's say it seems like that's the one you're passionate about, and there's some mods in there that you could share with the community in order to give them something to sink their teeth into, by all means do that before you release the full roster. That is good advice. I agree with that.
That is definitely something you can do. It's just if you get hooked on another big project that it can start pulling you in multiple directions, which you've alluded to being a problem for you. Also, I mean, this may not work for everybody, but when I'm working on rosters in particular and some of those long data entry aspects and whatnot, I like listening to music or podcasts. I like having something on in the background. Not distractingly so, but just having it there as background noise helps me. I enjoy doing that.
Yeah, I have a modding playlist.
Yeah.
No, same way, yeah.
Sometimes I'll listen to music from old NBA Live games, old NBA 2K games. If I'm working on something retro, I might listen to, shout out to Adam in all airness, his Jordan Era podcast, listening to interviews on that, catching up on some episodes I've missed. Hey, the NLSC podcast as well. If you're enjoying listening to our voices, then you can certainly listen to that. So getting that good environment that puts you in the mood for basketball gaming and modding and is just pleasant background noise, that is definitely something to consider as well. Overcoming the urge to keep tinkering and never completing. With any creative endeavor, there is that feeling of you've got to put down the brush at some point. That last brushstroke on the painting, that last flourish with the pencil on drawing, whatever. You need to put down the brush, you need to put down tools at some point. And that is tough because sometimes it feels like those projects are never truly finished, and there's always something else you can do. Something I'll put out there for a big roster mod in particular, and I mentioned demo releases and sequential releases, that's important. But when you do get to a point where you can release something that's resembling a finished project, remember that 95% is often good enough for a version 1.0 if you are short on time, or if it's going to take a long time to really get that last 5% because it's working on some faces for bench players or whatever, deep bench players. And that is something, especially with retro rosters, that because I know you're working on one, Lady Culture, that you really need to keep in mind, is that people in the modding community, look, there are some jerks who will say, oh, look, this doesn't look like Bob McCann at all in a 96 roster. That's not as important as other players in that 1996 roster, for example. If you have got the starters, the key players, all done, looking great, if you've got all the jerseys, the courts, but there's just maybe 5% of the faces of deep bench players exclusively, that roster is ready to go. You can plug those in later. You can future-proof that roster, set it up with some placeholder faces that you can overwrite with an update, and people who start their association can just drop those files in, and it'll overwrite those files, and it'll just pick those up. That is ready for release. You know, getting that 100% completion, just because you've got 5% to go with some art assets that can be replaced in a version 1.1 or version 2, or however you're handling the version numbers of your releases, that's okay. And it's okay to put down the brush.
Another point I want to make, finish a roster project for yourself as well. This isn't all about releasing something for the community.
Definitely.
Do you have any idea how much my brother and I have played NBA? My brothers and I play our NBA 2K17 roster mods and our 2K16 work in progress Ultimate Classic Teams roster. Do you have any idea how much we've played those and how many memories we've created with those? It's unbelievable. Release the, if you're going to really get down to it and really, put the final touches on this project, you also got to be doing it for you. So make sure that you love the game that you're modding and you love the project you're doing. And you know what? Treat it like a gym session. You're not going to, not finish a gym session, right? You're doing that for yourself as well. Treat your modding project like a gym session. Finish the session. That's the way I look at it. And you know what? This is coming from somebody who has had several projects since 2K17 where I couldn't finish. And do you know why I couldn't finish those? Because I didn't love the games and I wasn't going to be able to enjoy the game myself. Okay. I came into, or with my brothers. When I say myself, I also mean my brothers. Like, we weren't going to be able to enjoy it locally. I came into that NBA 2K19 project, which you're also a part of, and I was able to convert over 30 faces, I want to say, close to 40 faces from other games to help out in the project. And I was able to make a few faces for the project, but I didn't love 2K19 enough to take on a workload like you're taking on with 2K11 and 2K14, right? I wouldn't have been able to do it. I would not have finished it. So that's why I say it's so important to really love the game that you're modding and that you're not only doing the mod for the community, right? You got to be doing it for yourself and for, your local play as well.
That goes back to what we were talking about with charging for mods. It is that passion for modding and that passion for an artistic expression and also something that you want to play with. And if you are just modding for... And money should not be a motivation at all for the reasons we outlined in the previous mailbag segment. You should be creating something that you want to play with yourself. I think those are the mods that you can really sink your teeth into, the ones that you can happily spend hours upon, because you can then enjoy the fruits of your labor yourself. You're not just making it for everybody else. You're doing it because you think this would be a great thing to have that I want to play with. And that's how you finish a mod.
Right. And you know what? I've been really hoping that I would get into one of the newer 2Ks and be able to really sink my teeth into a new mod. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm probably going to go back and try to finish my 2K16 Ultimate Classic Teams roster, which is a work in progress. I was just talking to my brother about that the other night. Because you know what? I like 2K16 a lot more. And that's the game that I would love to share mods with the community with. So, like, I understand, and I understand my exposure isn't going to be high on the NLSC, and I understand that not as many people are going to download it because it's not the new game. But if I don't love the game and I don't love the project that I'm working on, there's absolutely no chance in hell I'm going to finish it. And that's why I'm not releasing mods for 2K22 right now, because I can't stand the PC version of the game, to be honest with you. Right now, I think the gameplay is a major step back from so many past NBA 2Ks that I just can't get into it.
I think it's a similar philosophy to gaming, to actually playing the games. If you're not enjoying a game, don't play it. If you're not enjoying modding a game, don't mod it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why you and I, clicked so well about basketball gaming from the beginning, and why we continue to click to this day is because, you know what? If we don't want to play NBA 2K22, we're not going to play it. Just because it's a new game, we're not going to play it. We're going to go back and do what we did the other night and play some Live 10 and play some Live 06 and throw on Live 96 and whatnot. And we're going to have a good time that way. I'm not going to feel forced to play a game just because it's the new title.
So hopefully that was helpful advice. And of course, stay tuned for all of our NBA Live 96 PC projects.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to playing more of those games with you. I love the fact that you own some of the games that I don't from the past on PC, so I'm anxious to dive in to those other older NBA Live games with you hosting and everything. And just another shout out to Parsec, because this has been an amazing year in gaming for both of us, and a large reason for that is because of the Parsec team. So thank you to those guys.
And thank you once again to both Lady Culture and Eros for those mailbag questions. As we said, we love the interactions. We love that you're enjoying the show. If you'd like to submit questions or topics for the listener mailbag, you can send them to podcast@nba-live.com or hit us up on any of our social channels, or indeed post them in the forum. But with that being said, that has brought us to the end of episode number 403 of the NLSC podcast. We thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the show. The show comes out every Sunday on the NLSC, which is nba-live.com. We're also on the major podcatching apps and platforms: Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Podcast Addict, just to name a few. On those platforms, search for NLSC Podcast, look for our logo, and that will be us. And of course, these days, the show is also posted to YouTube. I get it posted to our YouTube channel as soon as I can after I post it on the main site. So as long as you're tuning in and enjoying the show, that is the main thing. And we do love the interaction. So Derek, what are your socials and any other final words you have this week?
I love the interaction that we've been getting with the show. We've had a lot of comments on the YouTube channel. We've had some comments here and there on Facebook. I've had people talk to me about the show on Discord and whatnot. So I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who is listening and enjoying the show. And thank you for those, submitting highlights for the top 10 and those asking questions and participating with the show and whatnot. So thank you. And, for participating with everything with the NLSC in general. You can find me at D4Free84 on Twitter, where I'm the most active, or at D4FreeG. I'm also on the NLSC, obviously, as a team member, D4Free, and I've been uploading more to YouTube recently, some 2K22 My Team highlights, and I'm D4Free on YouTube.
Of course, I am Andrew in the forum and Andrew NLSC on Twitter. The NLSC is on Twitter and Facebook at the NLSC. We're on Instagram too, NLSC Basketball. Our YouTube channel is NBA Live Series Center. And of course, give a look to the NLSC itself, nba-live.com, for everything we do for basketball video games. But yes, that's all for this week, so thank you once again for tuning in. Until next time, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Derek.
Go get buckets, everyone.